It was a night in July, a long, long time ago. Why'd I eat the acid? I don't know. I wasn't thinking and I wasn't scared. Why'd I eat the acid? I wasn't prepared. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And I was hanging out with some friends, just getting loaded, when all of a sudden my mind exploded. I had a flash that I was gay and I got paranoid. I was sitting on the floor listening to Pink Floyd. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And I was drawing crazy pictures, and before I was done, the picture started pulsing like an alien lung. And I said, oh my God, this has just begun. And it was 12 more hours before I was done, and we were up on the rooftop. And I'll tell you the truth, I was convinced I'd already fallen off of the roof. And these weird metal things all around that space, they were teleporting me from place to place. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And this kid named Grim, he punched a cat in the head. He could read my thoughts, that's what he said. Then he described what it was like, but I didn't believe it. Like lifting a rug and seeing stars beneath it. The last time I did acid, I went insane. So we ran back downstairs where it was better to be, but I was trapped in spiral staircase infinity. And when we got to the door, I couldn't go inside, cause it was the gates of heaven and I had died. And the first rule of tripping was, don't be with people you don't trust. The second rule of LSD, the rooftop is not a good place to be. The third rule is to be prepared. The fourth rule is to not get scared. The fifth rule is to stay serene. Turn off your mind and float downstream. The sixth rule is to have a good friend at hand. The seventh rule, I hope you understand, is not to look too deep into your soul, or you might find a hideous, hopeless hole of hatred, hunger, infinite, idiot, mindless, meaningless, nothingness, 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 nothingness. And that's what I did. And I started to think, well, I think at this moment, I actually have the chance to figure out what human consciousness and the meaning of life is, and all of the big questions that I've always been wondering about. I think I'm starting to have some inkling of what this is actually all about, because I'm realizing for the first time that I don't know if any human has ever actually realized before that consciousness is actually the same thing as memory, and memory is consciousness. Because if I had no memory, then I wouldn't have any consciousness. I would just be this like endless blank slate. But because I remember the previous moment, and then I can sort of look through that moment and remember the moment before that, and the moment before that, because of the transparency of all these moments that are stacking up moment after moment, that sort of seems to construct an identity and a learning process and an awareness of things and opinions of things. And this whole chain of moments is like this little stack. It's like a wavering stack of moments that I'm standing on top of, and it's just every moment that goes by is making the stack a little bit taller, and each person is just standing on their own little stack of moments, and they're just kind of being pushed further and further away out from the surface of planet Earth into their own individual, alienated, lonely life as each moment goes by, and we get further away from the central life force at the beginning. And it's just like all these life forms on these long stalks of moments, like hairs growing off the earth and just getting longer and longer out into space until each person just kind of snaps off and then dies out alone in nothingness. But wait, what was I thinking about before? Oh, consciousness, memory, right? Yeah, I was remembering how when I was first born, I didn't have any of these moments yet. I didn't really have a consciousness yet, or an identity. So all I had was just the fact that I was alive, but that didn't really have any personality. It was just wanting to eat and not wanting to die. And so what was this personality that I thought I had? It was just the experiences and impressions and things that had happened to me along the way, but those were all completely arbitrary things. In fact, they could have just as easily been other things. I mean, I didn't have to get into this kind of music, or, I mean, I could have thought anything and believed anything. I mean, I guess, I don't know, people thought it was the right thing to do to fly planes into the World Trade Center, so it's possible to believe anything. I could believe, I mean, I believe this Daniel Johnston guy who makes songs on tapes is like great, but other people don't think that. I mean, I could have thought something else was great. I could think Slayer is great. I don't know. I could, then later in life I did think Slayer was great. So then what did it mean that I used to think Slayer was not great? And then what did it mean that I thought one thing was great and then later in life I looked back on Pearl Jam and realized maybe they're not so great? But that could be the same for absolutely anything. I was starting to lose all connection to any sense of meaning because I thought it was important for me to draw comic books, but then what if it was just completely arbitrary and I could have just thought it was important to do something else? But then how could I ever think anything was important once I realized that everything is arbitrarily interchangeable and not any more or less important than anything else? And that was the one thought that no human should ever think, because I realized I had destroyed my own consciousness by looking too deeply into how it was constructed. And I realized that everything is true because everything could be believed, but that just means that nothing is true, because if I believe something, but with the awareness that I could also just as easily believe something else, then how could I believe anything? So what I believe is true is that everybody believes something different is true, but that means that my mind is stuck in this short-circuited, destroyed condition, because if anybody ever tried to convince me that what I thought was true wasn't true, it would only prove that it was true, because what I believe is true is that everybody thinks something different is true, and I must never tell anybody else this horrible truth, or I'll destroy their mind like mine has been destroyed. And I would have to never tell anybody, ever. And then other horrible realizations followed, but the ultimate realization was that people like me just shouldn't do acid. So that was the last time. Well, special guest joining us, The Voltage, tonight, my brother Jack Lewis, imported for a few gigs.